Hi, I'm Leslie Townsend, President and co-founder of Kinesis Survey Technologies, and today I want to address some of the mobile issues in panels and communities and how to improve the user experience, not just within surveys, but across the entire research experience. As our industry has embraced mobile and tablet devices, the focus has been primarily on the survey experience and survey rendering to market research participants and creating the best user experience around that. In order to have a satisfactory experience on and across a wide array of devices, in many instances other aspects of the end-to-end research food chain also must be mobile and touchscreen enabled. So today I'd like to focus on how this mobilization, for lack of a better word, is implemented within panels and communities. And I'm really addressing larger public access panels as well as private or enterprise panels and communities. The easiest way to present the entire market research experience is from beginning to end. Even before a survey is designed, somewhere the participant has generally been sought out for recruitment. The respondent might have been asked to join a panel or recruited through social media or from websites, potentially becoming part of a river. They might have been a customer of a research sponsor and become a part of a list, or through that process a proprietary panel, and then on into a community. Or they might simply be intercepted on the fly during the research process through intercept or a website. Regardless of how the recruitment occurred, for online surveys, it more than often originates from some type of web presence. If it is from a traditional panel mechanism, traffic is routed toward a panelist website that initially serves as a location for registration, respondent authentication, and hopefully the double opt-in process. Today, these websites, for the most part, are supporting only traditional PCs and not supporting mobile and touchscreen devices. So if mobile recruitment sites are being used, then the panelist website itself should be device agnostic, supporting all or most panelist website functionality across all devices, mobile devices, tablet PCs, as well as traditional PCs. If social media is being used as a recruitment process, the same applies. And as we'll discuss later on, a large amount of social media traffic is now generated by mobile devices, so it's really becoming essential. So how does the registration process work in a mobile or device-agnostic environment? What does it entail? What are a few of the best practices? Those are what I'd like to take a moment or two to describe right now, and just discuss how they may deviate for a respondent who is using a mobile device versus a respondent using a web device. From a recruitment source, as I've mentioned, the respondent will generally be directed to a registration site. Registration sites are most often, usually deliberately kept very short as a best practice anyway, regardless of the device being used by the respondents. I would say most are fewer than 8 data entry fields, and so the actual formation of what you're gathering during the registration process may not require much modification other than the need to support the mobile browser itself. The considerations here are the same as for mobile surveys. The theming is important. The images will need to dynamically scale to render to the size of the device, and support for the touchscreen devices is mandatory. So the site must be able to detect the type of device being used and render accordingly. Now, if text messaging is going to be used as an invitation sending mode for the panel, it will be necessary to collect a phone number during some part of the registration or profiling process. So that may be a field that needs to be added during registration. We argue that if text messaging is going to be used as an invitation process, time zone must also be collected so that invitations can be scheduled at appropriate, suitable times for respondents, and may entail user settings that panelists can vary as they travel or as they're busy throughout the day. During registration, there's usually some type of behind-the-scenes authentication of the respondent occurring. The authentication process, if being used, should also detect for a mobile device as well, because respondent authentication processes differ depending on the type of device being used by the respondent. So, for instance, if IP address is being used as part of the authentication process, the process needs to vary or simply opt mobile devices out of the authentication. Because with mobile devices, the IP address can and will change based upon usage locations. So it's not a valid measure of the authentication of responses in this particular manner. A mobile respondent is much less likely to immediately check their email for double opt-in confirmation or submit to a formal double opt-in process. So one alternative, albeit more expensive and a bit more intrusive, is to use SMS as the double opt-in process when a mobile device is detected. When using email for double opt-in or SMS for that matter, and you're encountering mobile devices, you may want to leave profilers for a later stage. It's optional at this particular point in time and or greatly shortened to benefit the mobile respondents. And after opt-in, traditional email can then take over as the primary communication mode if that's what you prefer to do. Panelists who use their mobile devices to participate are also higher churners, which may mean that it's more desirable to route respondents into a particular survey than into a panel in the recruitment process, and kind of reverse and do the double opt-in after you've actually gotten them to complete a project, or to simply build a profile of that individual through time and have a panel that is not necessarily based upon double opt-in, but is simply gathering information from a variety of experiences through time. Once in the panel, or even if only visiting the panel website to redeem incentives or check privacy policies, that the panelist website is or should be a critical component of panel management strategy, and increasingly needs to be device agnostic, or as a more complicated alternative, be augmented with one or more mobile applications. So any functionality that is web-enabled should be mobile-enabled, and we would argue that mobile enablement means providing new and more features, not fewer. The features and functions that are most commonly supported on these sites would be things like automated retrieval of lost passwords, the display of available projects and history of projects, the ability to see and redeem incentives. Usually those are in real time. And the engagement tools like mini polls and refer a friend, birthday messages, all of these things. And of course the newer social media features, which I'm going to get to in a minute. All of these would need to be mobile enabled. Now, especially if the desire is to build a mobile-only panel or have a component of the panel that is mobile-enabled, there are increasingly a lot of newer features that are available only or especially to mobile respondents, and these are things like that also increase engagement and use of the site. And these could be things like, click to call for technical support, or request for text or callback, text to friend surveys. Of course, the image and video uploads rather than simply the use of avatars, but allowing panelists to upload media that represents them. The ability to provide their location for potential location-targeted surveys. These are still a way off, but it's going to take a while to train panelists to how these features use. Things like mobile coupon dispensing, and then the ability to offer communities, blogs, and other activities that are also based upon current location. These are really limited only by the imagination. So I'd like to move on and talk about redemptions for a bit, because payments should also be available from the mobile device for panelists who either prefer to use their mobile device or are doing so as requested by the researcher. Over the past 2 years, there's been tremendous strides made in moving secure payment transactions onto mobile. One example is PayPal, which has been providing mobile payments since 2010. They're projecting that they will process $7 billion in mobile payments in 2012. So currently, most types of redemption modes, whether it's couponing or Visa redemptions, PayPal, all of these things can be applied across mobile devices. Most panel managers agree that community functions should be available for respondents to engage with at any time and on any device. However, relatively few online panels and communities are effectively leveraging the power of mobile devices. We've, heard a lot of statistics over the last couple of years relative to mobile device sales and web usage. There's currently more than 5 billion mobile subscribers worldwide. Mobile web access will surpass computer web access sometime. It's projected maybe this year or next year. And about half of us in this country, at least, now own a smartphone. So what this means for panels and communities is that it's really time to say goodbye to the single mode sites, or else risk biasing participation. Online research communities need to be implemented in a dual mode to allow for interaction across all types of devices. And I'm sorry, I've skipped a slide, so let me just move on there. Increasingly, the heart and soul of a panel, as well as the source of additional data, is through the social media on the site. This can include blogs and chats, as well as moderated forums. Mobile users are especially ideal for community recruitment. Statistics from some of the largest social media sites indicate that a significant percentage of their members already engage via mobile devices. Facebook reports that 44% of its 800 million users regularly access Facebook from their mobile phones. The percentage is very similar. It's at 43% for Twitter users. So they're getting up there in terms of usage, very competitive with web devices. This also means that a large segment of individuals who participate in online social desire to do so using a mobile device, which means that all of the engagement activities on the site need to be device agnostic. Panel managers will likely find dual mode implementation and maintenance easiest if a mobile-supported content management platform or some type of multi-mode market research online community software solution is utilized. The platform or solution needs to support device detection so that the web pages and content display according to the panelists' utilized device types. Now that's unless, of course, there is a desire to augment with an app. Some panel managers have elected to maintain single mode websites with integrated smartphone apps, so kind of not necessarily supporting the website in dual mode. This strategy addresses the need for a mobile panel offering, and it also offers some unique and interesting new recruitment processes, but it limits the involvement for some panelists because app usage is obviously restricted to smartphone users, and while this is a rapidly growing segment, there is still a significant portion of the mobile population today, varies by geography, that is utilizing feature phones. And additionally, since apps must be developed using slightly differing standards based upon the smartphone operating system, more than one version of the app must be maintained, which can be both time-consuming and costly. So we're more advocates of the use of a dual-mode panelist website to support the broadest array of mobile devices and therefore the broadest array of panelists, but the two approaches are not mutually exclusive either. Capabilities of the browsers themselves continue to close the gap on computer browsers. I think everybody in our industry has heard a lot about HTML5, which is now being adopted, and it delivers a rich, more interactive mobile experience that's highly similar to today's web browsers. The predictions are that there will be around 2.1 billion mobile devices with HTML5 browsers by 2016, where we were at somewhere around 109 million last year, according to ABI research. So the migration that's occurring is substantial. Apps can deliver some functionality that browsers cannot, like barcode scanning, and they also make things like geolocation capture easier. But unless this functionality is required, a browser-based approach to mobile is generally more cost-effective. And the other thing I think that's worthy of mentioning about apps is that maintaining respondent engagement requires continual updates of new features, which are much more easily implemented on browser-based solutions. If you're going to be introducing functional updates to the panel, you have to stay ahead of the game and develop these in advance with apps, and with no real assurance that the panelists are going to update or download the updates as requested. Once an app is downloaded by the respondent, one of the primary issues becomes keeping them current with updates and keeping the engagement of the app fresh with new content, which, as I mentioned, is an ongoing development initiative. And now I'm going to get into the very mundane. The mobile panel potentially requires the use of new types of metadata that maybe we didn't collect in the past in previous panels. So these might include the device being used, the phone number of that device, again, if text messaging is going to be used. More types of legal opt-in for text messaging and location capture, again, depending on the privacy and regulatory rules in each particular region. Some planning around time zone messaging for text messaging, potentially some do not disturb settings. And an important consideration if SMS, in-app messaging, or other newer invitation modes are to be used is whether the opt-out from one mode is simply an opt-out from that mode or a general opt-out from the panel itself. So there's maybe a lot of planning around how opt-in and opt-out are being managed, and panelists may actually almost opt into mode. So I think I am close to the end of my time here, and I just want to thank you very much for listening and mention a few closing thoughts. Moving ahead, we believe that panels and communities whose existing website is currently limited to a computer browser interaction should take very immediate steps to start planning the conversion to dual mode. And those planning to introduce new websites should make sure that they support the majority of mobile browsers before going live. With the current state of mobile usage and the projections as to where it's headed in our industry, the health of research panels is going to increasingly depend on dual mode capabilities. The same goes for communities. Unless market researchers support participants on the devices that they choose to use and when they choose to use them, we're operating in this weird world where we try to dictate what device someone uses. We risk alienating the lifeblood of our industry. We risk an increasingly biased data set, and I think we only have half the fun. So I encourage everyone to start thinking about this as you're planning your panels and communities, and I'm open to questions. Thank you.